Call this meeting to order. Our first order of business, 1.1, is the oath of office for Mr. Gary Hughes. As everyone's aware, Mr. Hughes was a successful applicant to fill the vacant council seat. And without any further ado, we will proceed with your oath of office.
Okay. I, Gary Hughes, having been appointed to the office of councillor, municipality, and corporation of town of Cobalt, do solemnly promise and declare that I will truly, faithfully, and impartially exercise this office to the best of my knowledge and ability. I have not received and will not receive any payment or reward or promise thereof for exercise of this office in a biased, corrupt, or in any other improper manner. I will disclose any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, in accordance with the Municipality Conflict of Interest Act. I will faithfully and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And I make this solemn promise and declaration consciously, believing it to be true and knowing that it is the same force and effect as if I made under oath.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you. I need longer arms or maybe some glasses.
Glasses will help. Okay, thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Item 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none. Approval or amendments of meeting agenda. Be resolved that council approve the agenda of the committee of the whole meeting dated June the 7th, 2022, as presented. A mover and a seconder, please. Doug and Pat. For any discussion? Amendments? All in favor? Carried. Approval of minutes. Be it resolved that council approve the following minutes as presented. Regular meeting of council, May the 17th, 2022. A mover and seconder, please. Joe and Pat. For any discussion on the minutes? None? All in favor? Carried once more. Item 5, business arising from the minutes. Any business arising from the minutes? None? Inquiries, member to general public. Delegation of presentations. 7.1 zoning bylaw update. Jim Diamond, municipal planning consultant, will join us via Zoom.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Diamond. How are you?
Drying out after 2 days of torrential rain. Otherwise,
Better you than us.
yeah,
Thank you.
we needed it.
Okay. Okay, floor is yours.
Thank you. I have a presentation done, and I don't know if how you would like me to do it, whether John can play it if he's there, or whether or not I just share my screen. I'm happy to do either.
Either.
Either, whichever is more comfortable for you. John says either.
I'll share my screen if that works. Are we good?
Excellent.
So this is going to be a little bit of a planning 101 and kind of an update on where we are with everything. We started working in Cobalt a year ago, and with the intention of preparing a new official plan for the municipality, because your official plan is very dated and way too detailed for a municipality the size of Cobalt, and worked through the summer and fall and created an official plan for you, which is currently before the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, as well as all the other agencies of the province for review. An official plan sets out the future land use for the municipality. And so Schedule A to the official plan says what we would like to see happen in the future. And of course, a lot of it is bound by provincial rules, and the official plan has to comply with provincial policy and the Northern Ontario Growth Plan. And the back of our background scan, which is the information that we use to prepare the official plan, has probably about 20 pages of comments from people from the province about what they'd like to see in your official plan. But I made a promise to John Hodgson when I started this that I wasn't going to do a document that would sit on the shelf, and then I would try to get it down to 25 pages, and that's what we've done. So we have a schedule that shows future land use, a schedule that shows roads and servicing, where that's going to be in the municipality, and a schedule that shows development constraints. And the way we worded the official plan is that in order to do what the official plan would let you do on Schedule A, you need to overcome the development constraints on Schedule C. But it doesn't require amendments to the official plan. It just requires you to do studies that may be required if you're building close to the railway, if you're building close to a mine hazard, adjacent to a heritage site, and things like that. So again, the official plan doesn't regulate land use. What it does, it says what the future of land use will be in the municipality. And if you look at applications for consent or subdivision or zoning bylaw amendments, you refer back to your official plan and say, is this where we want it to go? And in fact, the Planning Act says that any zoning bylaw, a subdivision or official plan or subdivision or consent has to be in compliance with your official plan. Sometime as we started finishing your official plan, I deal on a day-to-day basis with administration, and part of my deal was if you ask me a question, I'll give you an answer, and I probably won't send you a bill for it. And I've learned a few things about where the constraints to development are in Cobalt, apart from what you see before you now. And one of the biggest problems is not your official plan, but your zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw is the law under which current land use is regulated. And the Building Code Act says that the chief building official shall issue a permit unless the application does not comply with applicable law, and the zoning bylaw is the applicable law. So there's probably been 5 or 6 inquiries that I've dealt with over the last year and a half or so, where people have wanted to do things with their property. And I had to say, sorry, the zoning bylaw just doesn't let you do that. And after some discussion with administration and with council and committee, the decision was made to prepare a new zoning bylaw. And we delivered the first draft of that bylaw to the municipality in April. And I've taken much the same approach with the zoning bylaw as I did with the draft official plan. That is to simplify your existing zoning bylaw as much as possible and provide more opportunities that people can do things with their property without having to go through a planning approval process. And so I'm going to speak just a little wee bit about some of the things that we've done. We've got you down, I don't know how many residential zones you have now, maybe 5. We've taken it down to 3. And we have a R1 zone, which is generally low density, but permits semis and duplex buildings in the same zone, as well as a bed and breakfast. We then have an R2 zone, which starts to increase the density of residential use that's permitted on the property. So it allows a boarding house. It allows for a townhouse in the R2 zone. And then with the R3 zone, we allow everything that's permitted in the R2 zone, plus an apartment building, a 4-plex dwelling, a retirement home, and a triplex building. So with that, when we look at the zoning maps and see what is zoned where, that zoning will permit someone to develop the property, provide more housing in the municipality, and if they comply with the regulations of the bylaw, that would be the side yards, front yards, rear yards, and coverage, then they can get a building permit without planning approval, having to come to the committee or council and seek approval for that. We've taken a similar approach with the commercial zones. I know in my covering letter, Mr. Mayor, I said we had 2. We actually have 3. I'm not so sure that we actually need the local commercial zone, but we created it, and this will require a little bit further work when I'm in town, not next week, but the week after. So a local commercial would be your typical variety store. So you'd have a business or professional office. A small retail store allows you to go up to 2,000 square feet. And in that zone, we've permitted 2 dwelling units, either behind the store or above the store, to, again, provide better opportunities for a better income stream for the person who owns the building or maybe runs the store. We then created a downtown commercial zone, and I believe we've covered a pretty broad area with this downtown commercial zone. And it permits pretty well everything I could think of that you would want in your downtown. But I, again, would encourage you to have a look at it and make sure everything's there. Key in this zone is that we have included dwelling units within a commercial building, as well as just plain dwelling units in the commercial zone. The reason for that is that I used a pretty broad brush when I applied the C2 zoned property, and there's lots of houses in the zone. Allowing them as a permitted use does not make them legal non-complying. It doesn't cause them problems if they want to do something with the house. If I didn't do that, then they would have to come to council to amend the bylaw if they wanted to do something with their house. So the intent here is to permit a broad range of uses in that area, allow commercial uses and residential uses in one place, enable people to change the type of use that's in the building without going through a long planning process, and hopefully see the buildings within that downtown zone become populated and filled up again. The third commercial zone is the highway commercial zone, and those are the uses that you typically find on the outskirts of town. It also includes a hotel and a motel, but again, I've tried to think of all of the things that you might want to have not in the downtown, but on your way into town, and use that highway commercial zone for those things. There's a couple of things I want to point out that we've done to address issues that we've seen in the town over the last little while. One of the problems is that there's a lot of properties that have to be placed in a hazard zone, even though they're residential uses, because there's mining hazards underneath the houses. And on more than one occasion, people have asked whether or not they could build a garage on their property where their house is. And my unfortunate answer has to be no, because the dwelling unit isn't permitted, so the accessory uses isn't permitted. So in section 3.2 of the bylaw, we put in a provision that says that legal non-conforming uses, which is a house in a hazard zone, can have accessory uses, buildings, and structures. So that will solve a couple of problems for a couple of people in Cobalt, and hopefully it makes it easier for them to develop. The other thing that our provincial government did a couple of years ago was, first of all, they said you could have 2 dwelling units in a house as a right. Not every zoning bylaw has to allow you to have 2 dwelling units in a single unit. Then they came along about a year and a half ago and said, well, in addition to that, a secondary unit can be in a separate building. And so really, according to what the provincial directive is now, you could actually have 3 dwelling units on one lot. And so section 3.5 addresses that and enables the additional dwellings in an existing dwelling unit or in an accessory building to an existing dwelling unit. Again, the intent is to solve the housing crisis that is prevalent throughout the province of Ontario. This will make it a lot easier for people to rent part of their house or build purpose-built rental housing in Cobalt. In dealing with people working at home, which is not a new thing, but certainly brought on a lot more by COVID. Home occupation, the bylaw would say you can have one other person other than the person who occupies the house engaged in the home occupation. So I could work in my house and have my planning technician Lisa working there with me every day, and that would be perfectly fine under the bylaw. Home industry is a use that's permitted where it's more of a light industrial type use, and in that provision, it allows a maximum of 2 people other than the occupant in the house to run the home industry. So that may be a small construction company or specialty trade that may do that. So again, trying to make it easier for people to work from their homes and also employ other people from those small businesses. We've got new zoning maps that I think you'll find a whole lot better than your existing zoning map. This is all done now. We've created a complete digital mapping system for the town of Cobalt. And I think that there is 16 different maps. They're all a size that you can actually read. And one of the things I wanted to point out is, and if I go back a couple of slides, I don't know if I need to or not, but I'll just say in the official plan that we drafted, we identified what we called priority intensification areas. And those were areas that we would like to see higher density residential buildings built. And so in a number of places in the town that we identified those priority intensification areas, we have pre-zoned lands in an R3 zone, which allows apartment buildings. The former school site, I know there's mining hazards in it. They're shown here. There may be more in here. Uses a R3H zone. So the R3 zone permits virtually every type of housing you could imagine.
Why don't we make a Fortnite statue in the R3 zone? It would be amazing. A lot of people would.
Excuse me?
Yeah, I'll be happy to entertain questions afterwards.
Not from the public.
So what the whole. Okay. What the holding does is it puts zoning on the property with a hold. It's like having a little rope around the zone. It says you can do what you want to do in that R3 zone, but first of all, in this case, you've got to satisfy the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, or whatever the ministry's name is this week, that there are no mine hazards there that are going to cause potential problem to life or property. And so you'll see there's a couple of places in town where we have pre-zoned these areas that we call the preferred intensification sites, and they have pre-zoned. We've also pre-zoned a lot of land, so it's very critical. I know there's a couple of people in the audience tonight, and I hope there's a couple of people that are watching online. It's really, really important that you have a look at these maps and make sure that we've got it right. Again, I've been working in Cobalt for about a year. I've spent about 4 days in town. I'm trying to do everything as well as I can through remote sensing, using air photos and old maps and things like that. But it's really important for the public to have a look at what we're doing and make sure that we've got it right. Now, staff has had a look at the draft bylaw, and it provided me some excellent comments on that, and we'll work through that. But it's really important, I think, for every member of the committee and any person who owns property in Cobalt to have a good look at this bylaw and make sure it does what they think they should do. With that in mind, on Monday, June 20th, we're going to hold an open house and workshop in the room you're in right now, and we'd like to get as many people there. We'll have packages of maps for people to look at and mark up and work our way through the bylaw. I want it to be an informal thing, so hopefully I can talk one-on-one with people. If people want to grab me before the meeting or after the meeting, I'm happy to do that. I think you'll find that pretty much everybody who sent me an email over the last year has got a reply back in 24 hours. And I fully intend on continuing to do that. But it's really important that we have a good look at the zoning bylaw. And that's the language I used. I didn't want to be too shocking, but I said in the notice, these documents could significantly affect how you may use your property. And it's really up to the property owners in Cobalt, as well as members of the committee and council and administration, to make sure that we get this right the first time. Changing it is not that easy. And with that, I'm prepared to answer any questions or listen to any comments that anybody has. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody from council have any comments or questions for Mr. Diamond? Go ahead, Joe.
Well done, by the way, thank you. And I got a question on tiny homes. I didn't read nothing in there about tiny homes. We got a lot of small properties. It's a great thing to throw these on there. Is there a reason why this is not getting put in?
So I didn't put a minimum dwelling unit size in the bylaw. Tiny homes are trailers. That's how they get around the zoning provisions for tiny homes. Apart from that, the Building Code Act establishes minimum floor areas for different rooms in a quote unquote building. So the way people have done tiny homes is they're on wheels and they're trailers, and then they don't have to meet the building code requirements. And that's generally how they do them. I haven't mentioned them specifically. It's a little bit tricky, and I need some direction and some help from you about how you want to regulate trailers in town. Can I park my RV on the driveway in front of my house all year long? Can somebody else live in it? That kind of thing.
What I'm talking about the tiny homes is if we put in a policy stating that off the wheels, maybe on a foundation, on a slab, have to be hooked up to the municipal services, all that, so we can tax these and have some of the lot empty lots that we have that are very small. Would be a great investment into this town.
Yeah, and so this maybe I talked about having a third dwelling unit in an accessory building on any residential lot. So you could have a second or third dwelling unit on any residential lot. That might be what it is a tiny home on a slab on any residential lot.
Sorry, it's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say is there's some little lots here that are 20 feet by 30 feet. It'd be great if somebody buys that and puts in a small home. And you can't build a big house on there and have everything you need, but a tiny home with a couple just starting off, a retired couple, would be great.
And can I interject here for a second? Tiny homes are a rage in a lot of North America right now. There's
Right.
actually a show on TV just specified to tiny homes. They're not trailers, they're not built on frames and axles and wheels. Some are built on spots, some are built on trailer supports in order to transport them to the site. Some are built right on site on a pad. They have access, as Councilor Dubé said, to municipal utilities, and they're just a smaller house, but they have to follow the building code. That's specific.
Yeah.
And as Joe says, I think with some of our small lots, it would be ideal for us.
Okay.
They are not a trailer.
Okay, I will look into it. I will talk to your CBO, and we'll see what we can do to make sure that that can happen.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. Go ahead, Angela.
So that brings me to a couple of questions I had, Jim. Now, when you're talking accessory buildings, and setbacks from rear lot lines, the house side lot lines, are you specifically, is that like sheds?
Yep.
Okay, I have a bit of a problem with that, and I'm gonna give my example, my personal example as rationale to help explain it. In my backyard, and my house is over 100 years old, so in my backyard, if I wanted to put a shed to house my snow blower, because my driveway is at the back of my house, I can't, because I have to be so far from the house and so far from my rear lot line that it doesn't leave me any space really for a shed, unless I'm gonna build a 2-foot shed.
Okay.
So are we, is that cemented in stone, those setback amounts? Is that provincially driven? Or can we tweak those a little bit?
This is exactly the time where we should be tweaking those things. As long as someone can get around their building so that they can paint it, maintain it, which is what, do you need 2 feet to do that? I don't really care. So let's have a look at it and see whether or not the provisions are too restrictive. I totally get what you're talking about, and as the mayor said, you've got some very small lots, so we can't have huge setbacks and expect anybody to build anything on them.
Yeah, like my house is only 2.5 feet from the lot line on the side. On the one side. So,
It's on the list.
thank you.
Any more, Pat?
Was there any mention in there of shipping containers that you use for,
No, it's not in there, I was gonna mention it.
to be used for a shed? Because I have a new neighbor that's just fixing that house, and that's what he was asking me about, if to use a shipping container as a shed.
So it's always an interesting issue of where you can and can't use shipping containers. Because if they're placed on the ground, I mean, I've seen tiny houses built out of shipping containers. In Berks Falls, Ontario, there's a 3-story apartment building that was built out of shipping containers. But they've converted them so they become a building under the building code. And so that's fine. We normally in the bylaw would allow a construction trailer during construction, as long as they have a valid building permit. Again, I'd like to hear from the committee about, should we have specific provisions to prohibit shipping containers from being used as accessory buildings? What are your thoughts on that?
Go ahead.
I would encourage the use of them as long as the exterior is clad or finished in some way, so that it is not an eyesore. Especially the half-size shipping containers. And I'm not talking the 45-foot ones. Because I think that they make the most sense for storage. They're a lot better than the tent sheds that people put up. And as long as there's something on the ground underneath them, they're gonna last a long time.
And it's recycling.
Yeah, recycle, repurpose, reuse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Lewis.
So just to talk about the effect on neighbors of putting in sea containers and those kinds of things. I know on Ruby Street, we had an incident there where one person had put a shipping container in his yard. The neighbor complained, and he ended up putting it on wheels, hauled the trailer, and got it around the rule. But that's something we're going to have to consider, because we could be treading on a lot of toes.
It is a slippery slope.
It is.
I think the location on your lot has to be very well thought of before it's done, and the size definitely, and definitely the.
And
looks of it.
finishing the
Yeah.
exterior of it, so it's
But
not.
it is it's gotta be given a lot of thought before it's. I agree with you 100%. That gentleman did defeat the bylaw by doing that.
Yes.
And I have one other.
Yeah.
When I was reading through the bylaw, I noticed that, and I think it's under R1, that it allows a 30-day occupancy in mobile trailers on either a vacant lot or an occupied lot. I left it at home, sorry.
That's okay.
With all my notes, my folded pages. Anyway, I have a bit of a problem with that.
So
I don't think it's appropriate for people to be residing in a mobile home, because where's the encouragement to build anything permanent? Because they can be there for 30 days, leave for a week, come back and reside another 30 days.
No, I see what you're getting at, yeah.
So I really have a bit of an issue with that one.
Why do we have an open house? That's why we're having this session right now. How are these out?
Unless it's in a mobile trailer park.
Sure. Okay, I had included that because there is a housing crisis, and if people can't find a place to live, sometimes that's a good short-term solution, but it's a very bad long-term solution. But if the committee is not in favor of it, it's easy to take out.
I could just see it being taken advantage of into perpetuity.
I see it in my travels where there's people living down the road from me. There were people living in a travel trailer for the whole winter. just because they couldn't find another place to live.
Yeah, like I could see, and that could encourage somebody to, in, the commercial zone, to set up an RV short-term park on the outskirts of town.
Do you have something you want to add there?
No, I was just saying maybe have them, do an application. We're talking about putting the RV in somebody's driveway.
Yeah.
So you know those people hopefully, and they're not just renting out the driveway for the RV. So maybe have them apply for an application or something.
Well, there are some people that do use the driveway, PRV for a home, actually.
Yeah.
Facebook learning right now. So.
It has a
Any other
scary,
comments? Yeah, it is scary.
I was gonna say, it has a scary reminder of Christmas Vacation.
Yeah. Any other questions for Mr. Diamond? No. Well, thank you very much, Jim.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to stress that if any members want to get in touch with me, if any members of the gallery tonight or online want to get in touch with me and ask me some questions, this is how we get these documents really, really good. And the more questions and answers, and the more you ask me to think about things or look into things, the better the zoning bylaw is going to be. And it is very important for the town of Cobalt to get a progressive zoning bylaw in place.
Thank you again. And just on that note, I want to remind everyone out there that June the 20th is an open house right here in the community hall. Packages and zoning bylaw packages are available at the town office. If you want to look at one in advance, take a look at it. Come on up and ask your questions. Let's get this right. It's your town. Let's do it the way it has to be done.
Great.
Go ahead.
Can I make a suggestion that we do up some kind of, like a print and see if some of the local businesses will post them? That, about the open house.
Oh, we could, I guess we could put something out there, yeah, sure. No problem.
I just, raise as much awareness as we can.
You guarantee get as many people out as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's great.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, business arising from delegations and presentation. Business. Item 9, staff and committee reports, Public Works. Steve, and Dave is available tonight due to illness. Is there any questions of the Public Works Department report that we can possibly get answers for you?
About beavers, have they been relocated or have they been destroyed?
Can't say, don't know. I think they've been relocated. I think it's a name that Trapper and just wanted. Yeah, I believe it was relocated. Or they were relocated. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay,
Has the application process opened up for summer students?
yes, we have some applicants that have already,
Good.
yes.
We had a number of applicants so far, and we'll be reaching out to those applicants there in the next few days.
Great.
And we can't start until early July.
Go ahead.
I'd like to know if any maintenance is being done or planned to be done on some of our town-owned buildings for walkways and stuff. I had a concern that was raised about the freezer building, and animals over the winter that urinate outside on the walkway, and it needed to be cleaned down. I understand that a resident has taken it upon himself to hose it down. But I'd like if we could get Public Works to put that in their regular schedule to do. Animals are animals, not much you can do about it.
But we can speak to public works about it.
Because it creates an unsanitary
Absolutely.
condition.
And it's not a good smell either. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Animal control. You've got the report in front of you, and it's dated, got several months of it, I believe. Go ahead, Jim.
Is there a way to talk to animal control to kind of give the report up to date? Like in March?
Yeah.
I know we definitely-
We will be doing that in the near future. We went actually to, I guess we put a letter of interest out there to see if anyone else was interested in doing animal control. The only applicant we got was the one that we now have. Nobody else is interested in doing it. And if you people want to put down some suggestions as to what you would like to see done, we will make sure that it does get done.
If you call me, I can give you the phone number. What's in-
Okay, that's not enough. Okay. Go ahead.
And I've been saying that for a while. Can we, have the phone number for animal control, emergency number for public works? And the bylaw officer posted
Yeah.
somewhere?
I'm not mistaken.
Or-
It's on our Facebook site.
Okay, but there are some people that don't utilize the computer and
So
Facebook.
what would you recommend then?
In the office window, the office door.
Okay, that's easy done, easily done.
Somewhere it's visible for the public when they go to get their mail and.
All of
Yeah,
these
we'll post
suggestions
it
are
up
great.
where, we have our meetings, where it shows council
Yeah.
meetings.
There's a billboard
And
there.
we will put it in with that billboard.
And on a side note, I think we also need to make sure that there's emergency contact numbers in the town-owned buildings as well.
Jot that all down and hand it into the town manager and it will get done.
Just suggestions.
I know, but sometimes we forget about them after we leave, you know? I do anyways. You got a short
We're all
memory.
getting older.
Okay, any other questions of animal control? 9.3, bylaw enforcement. Mr. Gilbo is hard at it. It was quiet for a bit, but it's starting to pick up again, my understanding, and he'll keep us up to date on everything he's doing and where he's doing it. If anyone has concerns or complaints, please submit them to the town office. We can't deal on them if we don't know what they are and when they happen and where they happen. You don't need to submit your name, you just have to put the complaint in, and then we can get some action from it, okay? Any comments on Mr. Gilbo's? Go ahead,
Just under miscellaneous, he made the comment that ambiguity exists in bylaw regarding number of birds that may be kept. Have we done anything to resolve that, or?
I don't think we have addressed that, no. No. It's a revision, we'd have to make them a bylaw.
Yeah, it's probably something that we could look at.
Okay. We can take a look at that. Okay, go ahead.
I've asked a few times if we can bring the animal control bylaw forward, so that we can bring it more into the current decade.
And hopefully we can get to that.
Yeah, I know there's
Yeah.
a lot of things.
Yeah, we have lots of stuff on our plate in the last month or so. Very lots of it up, so we have some time for Mr. Gallagher. Get his feet wet again. Still, not too deep. Any more concerns with bylaw? I dare say it's helped quite a bit anyways, it's made a lot of difference. Okay, 9.4, Evan, you're on. Municipal intern, Mr. Evan.
Not much to update on. Well, not as big as it usually is. So really this time I'm just letting everybody know in case you didn't hear or didn't see. So we did, officially have our announcement for Tech Park. So we've officially been approved. With our contribution, it's a little bit over 100,000. FedNor has approved 93,000 of their money that they're going to be providing. So right now we're just kind of reaching out to different companies, getting quotes on different things, trying to figure out, where to allocate the budget. So you'll see updates on that, over the next, month or two. You'll be, kind of hearing more about where the money's being spent. And then I guess the only other big thing really that's happening right now is at the end of the month, the government for asset management needs a levels of service document for the town's assets. So that's something that I'm working on with a company called Marmac. It's basically just collecting all of our, roads information, bridges, ditches, all that fun stuff, and basically providing a document to the government, saying basically here is our assets, here is the level that they're at, and if it needs to be updated, here's the level that we would like it updated to. It basically just provides the government proof that, instead of just kind of asking them for money to fix a road or fix, whatever, there is numbers and, there is data to suggest that things need to get updated. So that document should be in by the end of the month. And yeah, those are really just the two big projects I'm working on right now. So if anybody has questions on that, feel free to ask away.
Any questions about it? How's the progress on the park going?
It's going good. So like I said, like nothing is really set in stone right now. It's it's kind of just a lot of shopping. Like we're looking around, just seeing what our options are. We don't want to make any decisions before we kind of have a lot of quotes from different people to know what our best options are. So yeah, like right now, I've had some meetings over the last few days with some different organizations, different companies, just kind of figuring out locally, who's available, so that we can get some different options, and hopefully work's going to get underway, very, very soon. We want to make sure that we're not just spending the money willy nilly. We want to make sure we're going with the right people before we spend it all. So
Very good. Now, what about installing benches and that? Since the water table is low down there,
yeah,
you had a suggestion or an idea?
From me personally?
No, I think it was from somebody who told you, but you were the one that told me about it. Installing benches on cement pads, right?
Oh, yes, yeah, okay, sorry. So, essentially, the idea is to put cement padding down instead of doing it directly on the grass, just because, when it's so close to the water, it's risky. The soil there, has the potential to, be unstable. So, that's the idea for a few things. Like we're looking at doing some fencing around the basketball court area there, the tennis court area. Same kind of issue there. It's the soil is very wet there, so we're gonna have to look into some ideas to help dry it out. But yeah,
Excellent. And you're still looking for a toddler's playground, obviously?
Yes. Yeah. So again, like I said, that's one of the things where we have a lot of different options. You can, whether it's somebody locally, whether we're looking for someone in Southern Ontario, we're kind of looking at all our different options to make sure that we're picking the right person. So yeah, nothing is set in stone just yet, but we're getting there. We're making progress.
Okay.
And this is all being done from the list of suggestions we put in quite a while ago.
Yeah. It's all put together and.
Yeah. So I believe I actually wasn't here when it first came out, but I think it was in February or so of last year that there was a list that had come out. So we're still working off of that. That's still where all of our ideas, where we're searching for things. That's where it's all coming from. So yeah.
And I see the ball field is being used.
Yeah.
Practically every night. There's people down there playing ball, which is super good.
Yeah, that's great to see. So yeah.
Any other questions of that? Okay, thank you, sir.
No problem.
Be it resolved that council accept the staff and committee reports as presented. The mover and the seconder, please. Angela and Pat. Discussion has been had on all else. All in favor? Okay, item 10, items for council direction. 10.1, Councilor Anderson, Canada.
Oh, okay. I got to talk to Lois Perry for a few minutes this afternoon. Find out what's going on down in Cobalt. For my part up here, we confirmed the mayor's breakfast, and that would be a total of $1,800 for the cost for that. And Golden Age Club always estimates about 200 people for that breakfast. And then for the parade, which is the only other thing I really want to do in Cobalt, looking at a maximum of, I would say, of $400 if I can get away with that. That's for water and freezies. I'm lucky those were donated last time. Whereas traditionally we used to have stand down there and try and go first, second, third, and a whole pile of categories on all the kids coming. The year I took it over just before COVID, what I did was I went up to one of our favorite stores with lots of little bits and pieces and picked up a whole pile of little kids' toys and prizes and things, and they added in a pile more. And then every kid that showed up to go into the parade, because that's the idea of this parade, it's the kids. Every kid that showed up got a chance to pick something out of the box and pick a present for themselves, instead of having people say, no, my kid was better. The kids just absolutely love that. And then what I used the rest of the money for, I purchased gift certificates, and for any of the floats that came to the parade, as much as possible. The horses, the horse families that come. I have no idea how to contact those people. We put it up on the website and on Facebook that we're having a kids parade, and the horses will come. And then for the fire departments, if we have some left over, that kind of thing. So just as thank you gifts, because it does cost them to outfit their floats and stuff. So, small thank you gift goes a long way here. And I'm still going between 11:30 or 12 o'clock for the parade start, since I'll be working down at the Golden Age Club too. On the Coleman side, they've done nothing yet. They didn't get any grant for theirs, but they have decided they will put some money in, and they really haven't started to decide what, or to contact the Lions Club. So they're hoping the Lions Club, which I assume they will, would be going down there, to put on. And normally most years we had about $3,500 in the grant, and the excess that we had left over went to the Lions Club to help buy the food down there too. So that's still to come. No. That's about where it is. I have 2 or 3 extra people ready to help with the parade. Just contact the firemen from all 3 towns, because they always come, and there's your parade control and lots of noise for it, and away we go.
Any questions of Councilor Anderson? Anybody got time to spend on the 1st of July? You looking for volunteers all the time? Don't be shy.
Yeah, it's just just at the head of the parade, getting people going. But usually, I don't know, other years the fire department is the one that said, okay, this one.
Yeah, we
And
normally do that.
because
Or they normally do that.
yeah, so it doesn't take a lot of organizing there.
Okay. Very good. Go ahead.
To say, if you need any help that doesn't require a lot of foot time, I can always pitch in. I'll be home for Canada Day this year.
Okay. Good. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Okay. 10.2, direction on COVID protocols. First one is bylaw 2020-14, being a bylaw to amend Appendix A, Town of Cobalt Procedural Bylaw 2018-36 as amended, Municipal Emergency Act provisions. What is your flavor on this one, folks? What do you want to do with these bylaws? And go ahead.
Well, I think going through COVID taught us a lot, so I think really the electronic participation portion definitely needs to be updated. For sure. Because, you know, what it'll be next. Um, So, I went through and I seen the highlighted, portions for the electronic participation. And, yeah. Are we talking about going through it now, or are we just discussing it?
Just discussing it, what you would like to see done with the protocol. The emergency act provisions that have been implemented by the province, I believe it is. Do we get back to normal, or do we continue following these guidelines, or do we follow the health unit guidelines? That is your. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Your Worship. Personally, I think we should probably be following our health unit guidelines. They are specific to our area as opposed to the province. We've already seen many times there have been different outbreaks, different sizes, and different effects throughout the areas. So that's going to be more immediate, and it's going to be more meaningful for us to follow. I note that a lot of the professional organizations, nursing homes, for instance, still do testing on a regular basis for any visitors that are coming in as staff. I know that one of the local veterinarian groups that I use are still keeping pretty close to their trees. Before you had to wait outside in the car and they send a person out, bring the pet in, bring the pet back to you when they decide what they're going to do. Now they'll let one owner go in if they stay in the exam room only. So a lot of professional people are keeping very close reins on their reaction to COVID and the way things are getting around. So I think it would do us good to try and keep an eye on what they're doing and emulate.
I agree. Excellent. Everybody in agreement? Is that the direction that we're giving staff? Okay. So we're going to follow health unit guidelines for that one. Item 2 is the bylaw 2022-2, being a bylaw to adopt a COVID-19 vaccination policy for the town of Cobalt. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Daly. Do we want to rescind this bylaw, or what is the?
Well, Your Worship, we could look at possibility of a number of things here. Either we can look at changing the existing bylaw, or we can revoke it. So, just want to know what council's direction is as it pertains, because as we are seeing in a number of municipalities in not only the province but the country as well, there's a lot of emergency are being lifted at this time, as well as a number of employments in that aspect. But just wanted to have council's direction and what we proceed.
Okay, once again, ladies and gentlemen, which way do you want us to go on this? Go ahead.
Well, I would think if the vaccination policy that we put into effect, whoever's not vaccinated is not going to get vaccinated at this point. So I don't see any point in continuing the policy. It's not like we're going to have a huge changeover of stuff. And as long as we're following the guidelines of the System Health Unit, for revoking.
One second, no.
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll have a motion for that for the next meeting. Okay, well then, everybody's good with that one? Okay.
For the first one too, are we also looking at revoking the municipal emergency act?
I believe so, following the health
Same for direction.
health and okay, item 3 is letter of understanding between QP Local 127 and the town of Cobalt, RE COVID-19 response. Again, your direction for staff, please. Do we rescind this motion also, or just policy also? And follow the health unit?
That's on the installation, yeah.
Follow
Follow the health and health unit.
Okay. Okay. Nobody else have any comments or questions? Okay, you've got your direction, Mr. Daly? Okay.
Yes, Your Worship.
Perfect. Okay, 10.3, bylaw 2021-25, licensing and regulation of residential rental units. I see we have a report here from Mr. Hodgson, who's been involved in this policy. Has everybody had an opportunity to read it? Okay, which way does council want to go with this policy? With this bylaw, go ahead.
Personally, I like option number 3, where it says that the bylaw and the option of consideration is to rescind the bylaw altogether. I'm for getting rid of this thing.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Councilor.
And I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum because it's meant to be something that was non-discriminatory across the board, and I do think we do need some controls in place. And it will benefit the town in the long run by ensuring a standard of living that's applied across the board for standing accommodation. So there's nothing in the bylaw that contravenes provincial law. Municipal law can never come above provincial law. So I think a lot of the concerns were more of, I'm not saying they're not valid, but I think they were reactionary. Because the landlord-tenant laws already cover a lot of between the landlord and the tenant. The purpose of this bylaw, as far as I'm concerned, and what I see it doing, is just to ensure that things are kept up, that people are staying in a standard of living that's the same across the board. That things, you know, that their safety is paramount. And it also benefits the homeowners who own residences and live in those residences that are surrounded by rentals as well.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Anderson.
I'm in complete agreement with Councilor Adset that we get it through. Time will tell over the next year how successful it is, and let's get it through, because I'm concerned about the safety, you know, of the residents in many of the units that we see around. That we should be fire safe, warm.
I'm not 100% up to speed on this. This is a first meeting. How will that affect the safety of people, this bylaw, the dwellers?
The landlords have to keep the units up to a certain standard.
And who's going to, like Gilbo is going to enforce this? Like how are we going to enforce this if this does not do that? It's just somebody will call and complain and say, my railing's loose, and
You can answer that.
No.
and I apologize that I'm not
no.
read on this.
The landlord applies to the town for a license, and at the time that they apply for the license, there's a package that they need to fill out, which indicates what type of dwelling it is, the rooms, the floor plan of the place, and at that time, then the premises will be inspected. And I think in the bylaw, it says it can be the chief building official, the municipal law enforcement, chief fire official, or the medical officer of health through the health unit, but not necessarily all of them or any of those, but definitely our bylaw officer. And then it has to be applied, renewed once a year.
Who takes care of that right now? Who looks after that right now? That's the bylaw.
No one.
Nobody.
No. And we've had cases where, we've had some cases particularly where a storage unit or a storage room was rented out as a rental unit. No windows, just a door.
Mm-hmm.
So This is what this is all about. There's also option two, go ahead, Doug, did you have your hand up earlier? Sure.
Yep, I was just waiting for everybody else on their side. And I agree generally with what everybody is saying. I don't necessarily agree with the conclusions. And there's some gray areas, and I thank Gary for his question about how it's going to be implemented. Is it in fact going to be complaint generated, complaint driven by tenants, presumably, or are we going to conduct a visit to the property with each and every license application on each and every anniversary? I asked that because City of London, in their concerns, they pointed out we had 44,000 units, and if the city wanted to do something where it was driven by inspecting upon the issuance of a license, they would have to hire a very large number of inspectors and support staff to do that. And I don't want us getting tied up in a whole lot of paperwork that really extends what we've already been told for the past 3 years of our existence here, that the front staff are already at peak operations now. So that's my first question. If maybe, Steve, could you just give a quick answer on that? Is it complaint driven, or is it an inspection with purchase of a license?
Honestly, your worship, go ahead.
I think it would be complaint driven, it's the only way it can actually happen. You can't, like you said, go to every rental unit.
But no, and they would become redundant. If it was a well-maintained property, why would we be going back? You know, that's unfair to the tenant. That's an invasion of privacy. And I still believe a man's home is his castle, whether you're renting it or you own it. And I don't think people should be dropping in on it because of some municipal bylaw. I think that would be a terrible thing to do. So that's one of the questions. I did note as well in the proposed amendment the composition of the appeal board. And I was thinking perhaps, I wanted to do it so that if a person was appealing the decision of the treasurer, that they would be able to go to an independent arm's length appeal board of some sort. But I think probably we should specify what that board would be. And I would propose that perhaps the two councillors plus a landlord in town. And I think that would probably be a fair board. It would give somebody on the inside who understands the rules and the messes that renting properties get into, and councillors who can interpret the intent of the bylaw. So that would be a suggestion. Other problems I have with this, as soon as we add this and start charging for a license fee eventually is going to be paid for by the tenant. It's going to be passed straight down to them, and that's imposing additional costs on people who may not be able to afford that much in the way of additional costs, particularly in today's climate where you see inflation going up, costs across the board going up, but the government subsidies and things are not going up, and people's budgets are becoming very strained. So I'm not sure this is necessarily an appropriate time to look at that. And lastly, the kinds of things that keep me up at night are the questions like, is it a municipal responsibility? Is it a necessary bylaw? Do we have to do this? Or is it adequately covered through existing laws like the Landlord-Tenant Act that the province already has in place? Part of my question for that is when you start reading all of the cities and all of the kinds of things we do, you begin to find that they're quite different at every different one you look at. Some people in the field board require an officer to visit, and then the officer has to go get a warrant and do other things. Other people just say, well, do your best with what you got. So it's being applied quite differently throughout the province, depending on the municipality and what directions they choose to take. And that makes me think it should probably, if it's going to happen, it should be a provincial direction. It shouldn't be individual municipalities, because that creates a little bit of a state of unfairness throughout the province. And I don't think that's necessarily a benefit to people. And I don't know if I just want to jump into this basket of popularism. I sympathize with the idea that somebody needs to help out people, because particularly the jam that they're in now, where there aren't cornucopia of rental properties available to move to if you don't like your present situation. Your hands are quite often very much tied just because of the lack of rental properties available. And that makes it a serious matter for them. But again, they have lots of recourse under the Landlord-Tenant Act. I know one individual in town who advised the landlord that the rent was now being paid into a separate bank account, and as soon as the roof was fixed, the funds would be released. You can do that. You gotta set it up, but tenants can do an awful lot in their defense. And I'm not sure we really have to get this directly involved in it. I'll stop there for now.
Okay. Well, what staff would require is that we do give them direction as to which way to go. There's three options that they're recommending. One is status quo with existing bylaw, save a possible new compliance date. Two is adopt all or some of the proposed amendments that include A, Part 2, Section 2.1, establish an appeal committee to comprise 3 members, which Councilor Wilcox has indicated. Part 6, Section 6.3, limit authority of health unit, CBO, etc. Item C, Part 10, Section 10.6, limit authority to retrieve a license that has not been returned. B is Section 8.7, establish a timeline for appeals and letting a makeup of appeal body. E is 10.4, remove the decision of the clerk as final. And item F, Section 12.3, identify the town fine versus court fines, which is established by regulations. And of course, option 3 is that the staff's position that the proposed yet to be passed amendments clearly limit the authority and flexibility of the town to effectively implement the provisions of the bylaw, and as such, an option for consideration is to rescind the bylaw altogether. So we have 3 options that staff are recommending. For us, also, which do you use, which you want to give staff direction? You want a motion at the next meeting to 1, 2, or 3? Personally, I'd like to see number 3.
Second that.
And I'm fine with the bylaw. We can't just drop in. There's a requirement under the landlord tenant law that says 24 hours notice has to be given to the tenant. So there won't be any just dropping in. If somebody files a complaint, an appointment's gonna have to be made. We can't contravene provincial law. So that gives some security there. Yes, there are some remedies a lot of remedies under the Landlord Tenant Act, but there's also a lot of repercussions from some landlords. And again, this directly impacts homeowners that have rentals as neighbors as well. So I think we need to keep that in mind as well. So I'm still standing behind it.
Okay. Well, the question I have is, do you want to go with amendments? Go ahead, Gus.
I would never support it if we don't do the amendments, and I disagree that they limit anybody's ability, the ones that I propose. The business was pointing out that it's provincial offenses, it's strictly a matter of verifying what that passage was about. There was no title on it, and there should have been, in my opinion. For creating an appeal board only makes sense because you can't have the guy who's charged and judged them and sentenced them also be the guy who goes to appeal it. You know, that just doesn't make sense. And I don't think it's any further than that timelines. I like 30 days because if you are an absentee landlord, there can be all kinds of problems trying to get messages back and forth in a shorter period. And timelines get exhausted and then things proceed apace unintentionally. With respect to the complaint driven, if it's a tenant that's complaining, then I would expect the tenant would be welcoming anybody to come in and inspect the place, which opens you up to Landlord Tenant Act and other institutions. So I don't see a problem there. But I'm reminded of the idiom, maybe the path to hell is paved with good intentions. And I know we'd all like to help out those people who are particularly in a jam, but I think there are existing laws there that do that. And I'm not sure it's our role to become yet another level of government that's trying to enforce the same kinds of things. Perhaps we should be sending a voice to Toronto and asking the province to do their job better. I would certainly support that. But on balance, I'm going to go with Joe. the thing is just dynamite to me, and I don't really like it. Also, too, you know, start setting a precedent. If we take it upon ourselves to say we can go into cases and take things out, where do we draw that line as we go down that road? How far do we expand municipal abilities? And that scares me. I just have a little bit of a valuable role individualist in the sense that if I own it, it's mine and you guys ask before you do anything. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there.
The only real change, I don't think I brought up before, but was bugging me was, you know, like license is $250 a year, and you're right, gets passed on to the renter. And I think once the license is established, it doesn't need to be any charge for it after that. You know, not an annual fee, that kind of thing, so that that takes that part off. Still, I'd like to be able to do something for those we find out about.
Yeah.
And this, because it encompasses all landlords, it's in there to aim at the ones that where there's changes needed.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to point out that we did have a fire at one of our rentals, and I know that there have been numerous attempts before that to go in and inspect the premises. And I think a lot of, because of the conditions, and there was a lot of pushback on being able to get in. And this is, that bylaw is one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons this bylaw came into fruition. I just thought maybe it was good to remind everybody of that. Again, that's all I just thought I'd push that back out there.
Okay, so we've got,
Commissioners?
well, sorry.
Thanks,
Your
Rick.
hand was high enough.
The curse of being short. Eh?
Yeah.
Okay, I would just try and point out, to the best of my knowledge, the fire chief is permitted by law to enter residences to check for fire hazards. I remember our fire department used to do that on an annual basis. I can't remember which date it was, but I can remember coming around and looking for
Yeah, we used to
fire
have
alarms.
smoke detector checks and,
Yeah.
so on and so
So
forth.
that does, in part, at least address Councilor Redsett's point.
But they can be refused entry. There's nothing in the law that says you have to let them in.
Even though this bylaw, I think that they would refuse the bylaw, so entrance anyway, say you got the cops.
But if they want the license, they have to allow them in. If they don't, otherwise they
Is
get
the
fined.
landlord or the tenant that's not allowing them in? The tenant that says no, or is it the landlord? Because the landlord gets a license, but the tenant's the one at the door says you can't get in.
But it's up to the landlord to facilitate the bylaw.
I think with the landlord tenant act, I think they have an awful lot of
Okay.
rights and things there. I know you don't.
So again, I'm gonna ask for directions, it's getting more and more confusing here as we're going on. So we'll come to our next meeting with a motion to obviously do what do you think we should be doing?
I can bring up money for each of the options.
Yep.
And then at that time.
Okay, that'll work. Okay. Very good. Okay, 10.4. Bylaw 2022-14 being a bylaw to delegate authority to the clerk for certain acts during the lame duck period. And that is also in our packages. Has everybody had the opportunity to read that also? Yep.
I've read it.
And questions, comments, concerns? Yeah, go ahead, sorry. Yeah, you can speak, I'm sure.
Well, section 275 of the Municipal Act, chapter 25, is amended, rescinds acts of a council that takes place after nomination day, which is August 19th of this year, and also again after voting day of October 24th. The council is what we consider or call the lame duck position. At that, with having 7 council mayor, but if 6 of the individual either does not again run for council or at nomination time or on voting time, 6 of the 7, then we are in a lame duck until the new council begins. So this is just a bylaw that comes out every 4 years for restrictions.
Okay? Any questions, any more questions? Okay, so we'll have a motion for that at the next. Okay. 10.4, okay, 10.5. There it is. Thank you to Bismarck Nordic Club RE donation in memory of Councillor Gabani. Remove may concern, thank you so much for your $500 donation to the Bismarck Nordic Ski Club in memory of Bill Gabani. Bill was a dedicated volunteer in our club for many years, as his expertise in a wide variety of areas will be greatly missed. Your donation will be put to good use as we have several projects in progress. Sincerely, Beth Foley, Secretary Treasurer. So that was a very nice motion that was made, very good, and they appreciated it greatly. Thank you, folks. Be it resolved that council accept the items for council direction and information as presented. Mover and seconder, please. Doug and Joe. All in favor? Other business. We have a list here for the outstanding business.
Yeah, on that point, Your Worship, at a previous meeting, I'd asked that we also put on a meeting with the library over their budget concerns, and I was told it would be on, and now I don't see it on. So I just thought I would ask how come.
Okay, your worship. Steve with the library up on it. I guess we just dropped the ball on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Any other business? Actually, we'll make that report at the next general meeting. Okay, and you did ask, and I remember. No other business? The list of outstanding business is, anything to add on there? Go ahead.
Did we add the animal control bylaw underneath the business license bylaw?
And any other little projects that we have on the works that? Nothing? Okay, that was outstanding business. No closed session. Great. No business arising from closed session. Adjournment. Be it resolved that committee, the whole meeting of council be adjourned at 7:48. Over to seconder, please. Gary and Angela.
Hey, well done,
All
Bill.
in favor? There we go. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have yourself a good evening.